You're a SaaS founder, you've built something solid, but growth still feels harder than it should. Most SaaS companies don't fail because of bad tech. They fail because they've never become a must-have to the right customer. This podcast is here to change that. I'm Ton Dobbe, and this is the Remarkable SaaS Podcast. Every week I talk to founders in the trenches, facing friction, making bold moves, and building companies that last. We dig into real choices around focus, positioning, customer pool, team alignment, the things that separate forgettable software from the ones that people can't live without. No hype, no hacks. Just honest conversations to help you build something that people would miss if it was gone. If your SaaS should be indispensable but isn't yet, this is your podcast. Let's get into it. The guest on the podcast this week is Bassem Hamdy, CEO and co-founder at Briq.
Software is like Jello. You slap that thing, it's going to shake the hell out of it, right? So the moment you inject that code that's client specific, you're pooched.
This is Bassem. We dig into what happens when a CEO realizes his company is solving the wrong problem and has the nerve to tear everything down and start again. You'll hear why he killed the product he spent nearly 2 years building and what he discovered about the difference between building for customers and building for a market. The conversation reveals a pattern most SaaS founders don't see until it's too late, and what separates the companies that compound from those that collapse under their own weight. Well, hi Bassem. Thank you for making time available today and being the guest on the podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me.
That was not a, how do you say that? That was an easy decision. Let's put it that way. Simply because
battery will get you everywhere. Perfect.
But it's. I saw so many connections between what your history has been about and what my history has been about. That it was first of all be fun to meet you in the first place. And then I saw your smile, and I was looking forward to how the smile turned out in real life, which is fantastic. It's infectious. But there's some real stories to unplug today, and I was looking forward to that.
I love that.
Before we start talking about your company, Briq, love the name, specifically in connection to the construction industry.
Yeah, there you go.
But what drives you? What gives you energy as an entrepreneur?
Creation. I think I didn't realize until maybe in the last 2 years, as you become a CEO and you start giving up the reins on product, you start giving up the reins on founder-led sales to management teams, and you scale, you lose that connection, that feedback loop to creation. And that, I think that's why everybody becomes an entrepreneur. We get too big, we lose the touch of the client sometimes, and that was a real problem for me. And I had to find a way back into it. And, with the advent of AI technology that helps people code, whether it's cloud code or some of the other solutions, being able to get involved again in building product and having that feeling of building something, that's what really, really drives me. I have this natural curiosity that I know that's one of your list on your list of 10, which I love. I have this natural curiosity that drives me. It keeps me up at night. It makes me excited to be going to work the next day. And so I just like the process of creation. I love the process of creation.
Okay, well, you touched upon some very important topics already. Creation is one of them, and the other thing is indeed curiosity. Actually, there are two traits next to each other.
I love it.
But we'll talk about that later on. So that's a perfect bridge to the company. You founded the company in 2018.
Yeah.
How did you embark on the idea? I mean, what problem did you see that was not solved and needed solving?
Yeah, it's funny. When I started my career, I was in the PC revolution, really. We talk about big ERP systems. You have a background in it. I have a background. That was my first tech job. It was in the late 90s. It was with an ERP company. It was out of Toronto, Canada, focused on the construction industry. We were a small company. We had a handful of clients, and then that scaled exponentially. But that was really driven around client server, PC driven software.
Yeah.
Then the cloud revolution starts in the mid, 20 teens. I get recruited to go to Procore, big cloud story, Decacorn, and I got to be EVP of marketing and strategy there, help drive the product marketing and the strategy around go to market. And we scaled that 10x, ultimately IPO'd. And Briq was in answer to the next statement that I saw coming. Cloud and mobile created app sprawl, significant app sprawl. When you think about the ERP days, ERP had this one SAP style theory. Everything is going to work great when you buy it from me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, it's, we can talk about, we're integrated on the brochure level, I used to say, like, meaning we just talk about integrations, but the reality is I want to sell you more modules. With cloud and mobile, they wanted more usage. And then, the cloud opened up the door to these like very specific apps. Instead of having a big ERP track your time, you have a little app on your mobile phone tracking your time. So that ultimately became the problem we were solving. How do you orchestrate and organize data, processes, and people? And so the way we started, for lack of a better term, we were really a robotic process automation shop. We focused in 2018, we didn't call it AI, we didn't call it computer use, we called them bots. And these bots were programmed to operate like a human, to do work in mainly financial work streams. And that's how we really started talking about procure to pay or contract to cash. Those are really kind of the core areas. As we evolved and as we tried different product market fits, and I call it, I feel like we were refounded every 24 months. When we got to that point where AI intersected with RPA, both deterministic and probabilistic concepts in one platform, that's where Auto was born, our most recent generation of software. And it's really about the idea that we went from very deterministic robots that had to be told what to do to, I'll still call them digital workers or robots that can think for themselves, that can speak for themselves, that can learn for themselves. And that transference is bigger than PC generation. It's bigger than the cloud generation, the mobile generation. This is game changing. And for those, I talk to folks that have seen the light of AI and those that have not, those that think AI is ChatGPT writing an email for me versus those that realize AI is going to seismic shift how businesses are run. I'm in the other camp. I think there's going to be a seismic shift, and we're happy to be part of that.
That's also how I think about it, by the way. But it's you just in 2-3 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, you explained 7 years of company history. Finding product market fit every 24 months. And I realized indeed you started as this company that created these bots for the financial process, particularly in the construction industry. Yeah. And then of course you made the pivot towards the agentic world. I want to explore a couple of things around that, but sure. The first one, the question that I always want to ask is, when you started the company and you started building the first foundational pieces, first of all, what is still left of that? Did you completely throw everything away? Or is there something fundamental in that now has a place and now comes to life in a way that you never expected?
Absolutely. So we got, good to be lucky, lucky to be good, or however you want to describe it. These physical industries, these large, dangerous industries have very, very specific software, and work streams. So the bots that we wrote, they're smarter than they were originally, but that bot technology was the basis of our computer use model, right? So the ability for our robots to operate on client server, very archaic software, even in some cases green screen software, that is a big part of who we are today, is the ability to use their software like a human would. The other part of it is we had to teach something called the Briq graph. We had to give, in order for RPA to have ever worked, you needed a language, a common language. And that is really still the foundation of Briq today, which is the Briq graph. Whether you're running SAP or Salesforce, the concept between an opportunity and a project has meaning. It's temporally changing. It's an opportunity is just a project waiting to be awarded. So when you think like that, a database doesn't truly work for you in that case. So we had created this document-based store, what we call the Briq Graph, which is an ontology, a meaning to data in our work streams in construction. So then, Palantir talks about their ontology. We talk about our ontology. It's a differentiator to folks that separate, a product from a platform, a tool from an orchestrator. And if you want to orchestrate across systems, people, and processes, you need to have a common language, regardless of where that process comes from. So those are the two main functions.
And I mean, I hear a couple of things already, that this is specifically, of course, written with the focus on the context of construction industry, and you call them physical industries, and that makes it a little broader. It also adds utilities and energy companies, I guess. And
exactly. Raw materials to finished product. I like to say that. I think when people think construction, they think like big buildings or a stadium, or they think like somebody coming over and fixing their stove. They don't really think about the millions of things that we do in between. We have clients that are custom manufacturers building custom electrical systems. We have customers that are building roads and bridges. We have customers that are building, multifamily, energy distribution, oil and gas. Everything in the physical world is raw materials to finished product. And that's what we talk about that. We don't sell to digitized companies. We don't sell to companies like Briq. We don't sell to software companies. We sell to people that are generally procuring for very specific needs to complete something that may never be completed again. The Highway 101 that runs from San Diego to San Francisco, they're working on that for the rest of our lives. But the reality is that stretch of road, that one time they do that, that's the time, that's the thing they've completed. So unlike other industries, we're not trying to make a million iPhones. That's really important there.
Exactly. That's a big part of the repetition. And a lot of companies, of course, say that like with AI, you can do a lot with the repetition, but this is all about novelty.
Right. That's an excellent way to put it. It's novel. Every project is a novel concept.
Yeah, exactly. So that graph, that thinking in the beginning, okay, how do we make sense out of the data that people have? How can we work? How we can actually meet them where they are? And you talk green screens, which is a long way back, but it's the reality of the industry.
Yeah,
I can understand how that becomes your key differentiator in a market where we are right now. In that journey, you said we reached product market fit every 24 months. Yeah. But at some point, I think you're seeing a sort of a dead end with where you were,
100%,
where you were going, and you decided to make this big bet on sort of turning 180 degrees. I'm not sure whether it's 180 or 90, but you go a different direction. What was that point?
I think what happens as you scale is you start chasing features, not product. And what happens, we're going through this, like I said, every 12, 18, 24 months, good, bad, or indifferent. When you have a go-to-market CEO, sales come, right? When you're when you're founder-led selling, you can get a lot of sales and you can get revenue. And with that revenue comes experimentation, because you're not talking about a product as much as you're talking about a platform. And I know that sounds like a cop-out, but when you build robots, custom robots, it's easy to say yes to a lot of things. And you end up saying yes to a lot of things. And the whole company starts to look like, I call it a Jira board, where customer is at the top of that board. And that's important. I am customer first. It is very important. However, when the entire company starts chasing customer tickets for features, you start becoming a very, very different type of company. And that's why you really need to shake the tree every 12, 24 months, where you check back in and say, are we doing this for a customer, or are we doing it for the next 10 customers? And the answer is usually, I don't know, and I'm doing it to get off the phone with this client, regardless of the, software is like Jello. You slap that thing, it's going to shake the hell out of it. Right. So the moment you inject that code that's client specific, you're pooched. And so what I think we had to do is say no more, and come in with this idea that, look, we're the experts, we're the technologists, they're the client, they have the problem. I'm the expert. I don't walk into my doctor's office and say, hey, I want you to cut off my arm. It's like, well, we're an automation shop, and the client says to it, I want to automate stabbing a fork in my leg every week. That's not your job to tell them, yeah, let me, how big's the fork? Right? That's what a custom shop does. It's like, oh, do you want the fork to be gold or silver? So what ends up happening is saying no is no, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. What you're asking for is going to eventually lead to your amputation of your leg. I'm really in this doctor trend here. But the idea here is that saying no and saying, hey, I know better. And Steve Jobs said it best. It's like, I want to listen to my customers, but I also have to give them something they've never seen before to solve problems in ways they don't even know are possible. Not explain to me what the problem is and then the solution. And so I think that's the key of our, I call it, maybe it's 90 degrees every 24 months, but it's definitely, you end up back to the same.
Yeah, that's true. No, but I mean, I know how hard it is, because there's all this investment that is going in there and all this effort, and people have learned things, and it's hard to sometimes say, okay, stop here, and we need to divert into a different direction.
I lived it 2 generations deep. I lived it, in the PC era, and I lived it in the cloud era even. In the cloud era, it's always easier to a product guy and a development person or an engineer to go in and say it's easier to start from scratch because you don't have to learn the code that's already there. And you end up writing client-specific features that end up getting deprecated 2 years later. And that's really what, we don't want to do with the AI revolution, but it's almost easier to do it with the AI revolution. That's a real trap, because it's easy to say it's a customer-specific prompt.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's time on this. You bring up one of the big chapters in my book, Trait Number 1. Remarkable software companies acknowledge they cannot please everyone. And that's not about who you're for, but it's more about who you're not for. And being super clear about it in the whole company. Because you say, you grow, and people in R&D say yes, and people in support say yes, and people in customer success say yes. Everybody's saying yes.
And then all of a sudden you have some unmanageable, code base. And the real shift, I think I mentioned this in the pre-call, it's like the real shift. I was on with the QA team, and was like talking about the new version, Auto Gen 6 we just released. And, testing Auto Gen 6 is very, very different than Gen 5. Gen 5 was all about testing customer tickets. Gen 6 is testing Auto's prompts. They have to have the same response. And they're like, well, where are we going to get the documents from? I'm like, make them up. You have to know what the input is, what the transformation is, and what the output is. And every time it needs to be the same. Yeah. And it's going from customers to that mentality is seismic. It is a seismic shift. And I think right now because we experimented a lot in 24, in 25 in agentic and in AI in general. And I think a lot of AI companies are going through that shift. It's like, wow, we need product prompts, not custom prompts. And that's really where I think we are right now.
Let me make a small interruption here. Bassem just made a critical remark that other software CEOs often miss. The call with his QA team revealed how far the company has drifted. His QA team couldn't test the new product version because they were still organized around individual customer files, not product features. The entire company had drifted without even noticing. And that is the real danger. The shift from product to a custom shop doesn't announce by itself. It happens one ticket, one feature request, one yes at a time, until somebody finally asks why the company feels different. And that is what remarkable software companies do. They acknowledge they cannot please everyone. They master the art of curiosity, and then they focus on the essence. Want to master these traits as well? Simply read my book. I've made the electronic version available for free. Just visit theremarkableeffect.com to grab your copy, and inspiration will spark within 10 minutes. Back to the interview. Fascinating. So, where do I take this one? The whole thing around what you're building, and I mean, if I count the number of companies that are in the agentic space that have been on my podcast in the last year, it's like it's a trend, and everybody agrees with that. The speed, of course, is extremely fast. How do you ensure that you keep the defensible differentiation, or actually you extend the defensible differentiation? What are you doing specifically in the company?
The more you move from, once you say no, you have to know what you say yes to. And when you're saying yes to things, you have to have three things in my mind. I've been a niche marketer my whole career. You have to know the domain. You have to be better at that domain, especially when you're competing with Anthropic or ChatGPT. These are trillion-dollar companies. Anthropic can tell you about the ins and outs of a product cut sheet, but it can't stamp it for you and highlight it and know it needs to do that. And I think that deep domain expertise is very, very defensible, especially being able to translate the expertise to actual AI, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is know your client base. We don't sell to technologists in SaaS companies. We sell to folks that do dirty and dangerous jobs. It's a different deployment concept than what somebody that sits at home and codes or what have you will have to deal with. So knowing the actual personas you're dealing with, and then ultimately the golden thread, the line is the golden thread. How do these people make money and go to where the money is? And it's no surprise that our top AI, work streams are contract to cash and procure to pay, money in, money out. And people are worried about where the money's going and when's the money coming in. Those are the two biggest kind of factors that you see happening. Money in, money out. And so everything else becomes noise around that. And I think focusing on the money, focusing on the personas you're actually selling to, and this being very specific domain expertise. I'll say, the day before, week before I went to Procore, there was something called this Byron Dieter from Bessemer, who eventually put money into Procore, had this concept of what is the new rage of cloud. It's called vertical cloud. Vertical cloud is Monday.com's not going to sell PM software into construction. Procore is. You'll see, and you heard it here first. In the next 6 months, people are going to start talking about vertical AI, because you can't be everything to everyone. You just can't. You can't take. Anthropic does not have the internal fortitude to read 600 gigs of drawings and find anomalies. They just can't. First of all, they have a limit of 100 pages. Second of all, they want you to write the code themselves, which is not our audience. So vertical AI is where this is going. And I think integrated vertical AI, Briq is more akin to an ERP than it is an agent. We have agents, I hate that term, but we have agents in AP, AR, payroll, operations, business development. So and we talk to other agents. So I think you're going to see this world where, just like where mobile had all these apps, then they ended up getting consolidated in one big app. And you seeing that happening more and more and more. You do your calendar and your email in Superhuman. You don't just do your email. You do, Gmail covers all of it. Google Docs, eventually everything gets consolidated. This year is the year of consolidated agents and vertical AI. I truly believe that.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, because that's the area where you can. It's all about context, your product can be fantastic, but it's the context that is applied in that makes all the difference. Yeah,
context windows is the most underrated conversational topics out there, because context windows are very, very specific. If you don't have the right context window, the answer you're going to get out of AI is wrong. It's just
Yeah,
that simple.
true. That's completely true. And I think I like how you talk about that the industries that you're serving are, um, you said different and dangerous, doing different and
Dirty
dangerous
and
work.
dangerous. I call it dirty.
Dirty and,
Actually,
yeah, dirty and dangerous
former
work.
board member, I stole that line
Yeah.
from it, but it's the right word. This is not, pretty office buildings, although some of our clients have wonderful office buildings, but it's a full contact sport.
Yeah, it's I completely agree. That is part of the context. And how they make money is therefore also part of the context. And all of
Right.
these things determine what technology need to do or what the technology not need to do in order to make an impact.
Yep, absolutely.
So started in 2018, and you start exploring, of course, the construction and later on a little bit
And we
broader
solve
the
problems. Right,
physical
exactly.
industries. What did you learn from being, well, you talked also about founder-led sales. What did you learn from that first 100 customers that's A, that you took forward, and B, that you said, okay, let's get rid of that?
Yeah. Okay. That's a great question. So I'll tell you at the beginning, when you talk to forget about 100 clients, they're going to describe the exact same problem in two completely different ways. And I think the commonality, we call it an ontology. I think we talked about this a little earlier, the idea of giving meaning to data. The ontology also gives meanings to problems. And you can have the same person describe the same thing, the same outcome in such radically different ways that it sounds like they're different. And the challenge on the first 50, 100 is saying, where is the commonality in the problem you are solving? Because when you're far away, like when you're scaling and you're putting people in, young, smart people, they're going to hear the same problem in two different ways, and they might, heaven forbid, bring product or the company into two different directions when the problem should have been solved in one way.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were lucky enough to do, because of our focus on industries and niche, we were able to find commonality of problem and commonality of solution. So that was a big part. The one thing that I, really, it's a double-edged sword. Experimentation brings new products, brings new revenue streams. I think we should have experimented less on things that are less art and more, we should have, the art of construction is very hard. And, for example, financial forecasting on a project is art, not science. And it's all kind of made up. Nobody knows. I mean, the dirty secret, nobody knows how much a project's going to cost at the end. Nobody does.
No.
That's it. That's the answer. Now, building a bunch of spreadsheets in between not knowing and telling somebody you don't know is very different. So they kind of baffle with BS, right? It's like, oh, here's a spreadsheet. So we tried to automate that chaos. And it's all, and it's all, and I tell my, I'll never say it to their clients, our clients' clients, but the reality is they don't. It can rain tomorrow and it'll cost more. And they don't know if it's going to rain. There could be a hazmat situation where somebody spills something and it's going to cost more. The client might say, I don't like that, and it's going to cost more. And so we took a 18-month detour into a product that I happily discontinued after 18, 24 months, which was trying to pretend like the client's art can be our science. That's the thing that it's a learning lesson. I obviously regret it. It wasted a lot of resources. But yeah, that's the one I would have left behind. Knowing what the client's BS really is. And it's like, I need you to give me backup for something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, true.
And I need AI to fix that. And you're like, well, you can't AI like making up how much something costs. So that's the one.
Yeah. You can get closer to it, but if it's still 20% off, it's still 20% off.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Someone is going to go to court to that. No, I understand that. I like that. But yeah, I understand how also how this starts because you see a big opportunity and you think, okay, if we can solve this, because it's a very interesting problem to solve.
Yeah, especially when you have that natural curiosity, I can fix this.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's the other thing about founder-led sales and go-to-market is that CEOs are really, really bad at saying what they're not good at. And that's another lesson I had to learn. I don't like training people. I refuse to do it. I literally I don't like training. I have like a Bassem whisperer works at Briq. His name's Alice Talton. He knows what I'm saying. He translates it to other people. I like giving analogies. I like telling funny stories, but I don't like training people. And know thyself. That's another thing. I'm not good at that. And so knowing that what I'm not good at is really, really important. And that takes a while because when you're an employee, you never want to tell your boss, I'm not good at that. Because then you're not going to get like a very good review. Oh, he's not, a hard worker or whatever. It's like, no, I'm not going to, as CEO, I get to say it every day. I'm not good at that and I don't want to do it. That's the other thing. I think learning that faster would have helped. But yeah, I'm learning every day.
Interesting. One thing that's fascinating from reading it, well, I mean, it made me laugh, it made me smile. I read about, and that is the research that I did, signature belief, that there's a lot of people say that the construction industry is slow to figure out technology. And that's always also maybe how I thought about it. And I just hear you talk about green screens and that kind of stuff. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. But what you're saying there, and I'm not sure where I found it, but it's technology that is slow to figure out the construction industry.
Yeah. I say it every day.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
but the companies that are still running these green screens, is that
Right.
also the audience that are now happily taking on agentic? I mean, it sort of feels like a contradiction.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I tell this story all the time. So if you went to a job site in 1950, you would see a backhoe, you would see a bulldozer, you would see a truck.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, because they have to find the right tool for the right job. Outside of construction, there's a software package called Epic, one of the largest private companies on the planet. Epic, for the Americans listening to this, Epic is your MyChart program. Then when you go to the doctor, you have something called MyChart. It's a unified medical charting system. It's based in Cobalt, right? So when something works, it just works and you use it. We're not trying to reinvent the shovel every 3 days. Like you just use a shovel. And so and this is where I get into this concept of software being commoditized or dead. What's the ROI of going from one ERP to another ERP? What is that ROI? There is no ROI from going from one AP invoice screen to another AP invoice screen, or one GL to another GL. There is no ROI. The ROI is in automating the work stream. And construction has a really hard work stream.
yeah.
It is really, really difficult. And when that work stream is as hard as this one is, you can't go to Monday.com and say, hey, teach your superintendent who never graduated grade school and is 70 years old how to use Monday.com. It's just not going to work. So I think where the construction industry is challenged is most people don't really even know what construction is. They think they know, but they don't really even know what construction is. Like when I say construction company, people have envisioned a lot of different things. Jacobs Engineering and like Tom's Builder, they're different beasts. And Amazon is one of the world's largest construction companies. Like people forget that. And it's like, and Meta is one of the world's largest construction companies. Event companies are concerned. Everything is taking raw materials and building something. And I think that's where we have this disconnect in understanding from a niche perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And possibly also with agentic, yeah, you take away this whole mantra of training people and getting people to embrace things that they don't have to embrace anymore because it's now part of the stream. It is being done for them.
Yeah, well, I think
Um,
one of the things, like you mentioned, with agentic being out there and kind of bubbly, is I think there is still an element that agentic versus robotic requires the concept of changing how they do certain things. So the promise of robotic when they're custom and deterministic, the human element is lower, right? So it'll do the same thing every time perfectly
mhm.
without a human driving. But when the robot doesn't understand something, It's going to raise a hand and stop, right? With agentic, it's going to do the same thing every time perfectly if you're vertical AI. But when it needs help, it's going to ask you for help in a very casual way. But the way it's asking for help means that you have to change your business flow. Somebody has to be aware that, in our case, Auto is saying, hey, man, this invoice doesn't make sense, or this PO doesn't make sense, or this drawing is invalid. It has to know that. And so I think what people are underrating is the amount of impact agentic can have on your day-to-day work. And I think that's a real danger right now.
Yeah,
People
exactly. Do you see that also in the sales cycles? I mean, and maybe also the companies that you focus on or not focus on, because at the end, within the construction industry, do you say, okay, it's for them and it's not for them yet?
Yeah, I think what we started with, I started is like, what do you guys want to do? I'll do anything for you, right?
Hmm.
I'll do anything. And then you get very narrow and say, oh, only going to do this one thing. And then you reopen the floodgate a little bit and you go, I'll do something. And we call it the skills inventory. And I think when you're not really productized at the beginning, you're like, I'll do any skill. And when you're a jack of all trades, you're a master of none. When you can
Yeah.
say, hey, I have these 5 core work streams that we do. It's a lead to award, for instance. Read your leads, rate your leads, automate your lead collection, automate lead scoring, then turn that lead scoring into analysis, and then help the analysis to go and win a project. That's a work stream that Briq Auto is really, really good at. There's 4 others that were like that, 4 other modules. If they want a skill that doesn't fit in those 5 modules, I think my time here now is to say no.
Yeah.
It's like, if you have a skill that you can't relate to one of these things, procure to pay, contract to cash, lead to award to close out the human capital work stream. If you're not in one of those 5 buckets, then those are pretty wide buckets. If you can't find something you want to win in one of those 5 buckets, you got to go. Like I'm not going to sell you, and like what, unless you can explain to me how it relates to one of those 5 things. And those are big 5 things. Now, sometimes they don't know that they relate to these 5 things. And so it's our job as salespeople to tell them, oh, this hiring issue is affecting your procure to pay, or sorry, your contract to cash, because you're a time and materials contractor. You're not hiring people fast enough into the system. So time is getting lost. Isn't that right, Mr. and Mrs. Klein? And then they're like, yeah, golden thread. I understand how they make money and why they think this low-level problem should be solved by agentic. And then we're connecting the dots. That's our job to do that for them. And that's really how selling has changed since AI.
Yeah, yeah. It goes all back to, okay, we can, functionality-wise, you can maybe help them, but the question at the end is the approach that you've taken, is that the right approach for this type of customer? And if you understand that, then it's about matching the fit, and it becomes a way more relevant conversation. Looking at the time, I want to ask 1 or 2 questions more.
Absolutely.
So one thing at the end, there's 7 years that have evolved from when you started to where you are right now. Maybe already it's 8 years.
Yeah.
What have you stopped tracking that you thought was crucial back then, or maybe the other way around? Like, how did your perspective on success change for the company?
That's a really great question. I have to tell you without getting in trouble. I think when I was at these other 2 companies, Act 1 and 2 of my career, there was this culture was painted on the wall nonsense, and the flex was how many hires you made. I have 25 million offices and 30 gazillion people. And now the flex in my mind is revenue per employee. I want to be a 3-person company doing 10 times the revenue. And that's a very, like, people think I'm, not a nice person by saying that, but I think I'm being a realist and I'm dealing with what's out there. We over-indexed on a millennial and Generation Z coddling mentality to like build culture around this idea that, do what you want, where you want, beanbags and unicorn parties. And nonsense, nonsense, nonsense. And we forgot that all of that, yes, you want a good place to work and a fun place to work. But I'm here to offer you one thing: natural curiosity, hard work, and the ability to do the next great thing in your career. I'm not here to give you a candy wall. And I think when I was, coming into it, it was all about that nonsense. It was all about talking about like what we can give these employees, and they'll take whatever you want. They'll take whatever you give. We're one team with one shared goal, and it's not going to be pretty. It ain't going to be pretty. This is, we talk about construction, so is SaaS and AI. Is a full contact sports. Strap on that helmet because we're going through the wall. Don't tell me things are changing or shifting, because they're going to change and shift every 12 to 24 months. Not for you. That's fine. Bye-bye. So I think the scorecard is revenue per employee, not whatever,
True. It's such an important metric that so many people see. I don't know, either they don't want to see, or like you say, it's they measure their success by the number of people they've hired. But
Yeah.
that whole thing of employee and revenue per employee says so much about the value that your product provides in the market, the leverage you create as a company. These are all good things.
Yeah.
It makes
Yeah,
it's also much more fun for people to work for you.
Yeah, 100%. It provides clarity. I think more, we used to say more hands is better. And no, more hands in code pie actually makes the code pie a mud pie. So
Yeah.
like I think that the idea now, AI should that I mean that's listen, if people in construction are listening to this, or people in any industry is listening to this, your competitors know that, and you better know it, is that we're not trying to take people's jobs away. The economy has grown every year, regardless of like the ups and downs. We're the entire economy is a jagged line up and to the right, right? So you're always going to grow as long as you're a good business, but you can't continue to hire people to manage that growth at the same rate, because AI fixes that problem for you. And if you don't do it, you will go out of business, because you will bid higher than the next person who has figured out how to use AI. This isn't bubbly talk. This is not a marketing campaign. This is reality. If you do not figure this out, you will no longer exist. It's, I tell this last story. I went to clients in the late 90s implementing ERP. That was like 23 years old. This is my first gig. And they were just buying their first PCs. And those companies don't exist anymore. Those companies.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's true.
Sad.
Last question then. Do and a don't. I mean, from the whole, your experience now as an entrepreneur, co-founding the company Briq, what would be a do and what would be a don't that you'd like to say, give as advice to other people that are on a similar type of journey?
Oh, that's good. Great question. As much as we talked about product market fit, don't be a single feature company. And I think that's, I'll tell the example of PlanGrid and Procore. So Procore is an older company than PlanGrid. And I don't know if you remember PlanGrid, but it was a company that was acquired by Autodesk. It was a good exit for the founders. It exited at 800 million. All it did was what Procore did in one module, drawings. So all it did was manage drawings. Sequoia Capital was in there. Sequoia, typical VC, just focus on one thing, be really good at it. It's like, okay. Never been true, by the way, of any software company that's successful at Fine. They did that. They sold for $800 million, decent exit. It's been, I don't know, deprecated. It's gone. It's dead. Who knows where it is? Just got eaten by the Autodesk machine, and it's gone now. Procore is a decacore. We did more than one thing. I think the biggest don't that I would say is don't just focus on one feature set, because then you're very easy to replace. And, use that as an example. That's a 12x difference in valuation today on what they did, right? So I think that's one. The biggest do is be founder-led sales, even if you're a technologist, because you got to be in front of the prospect. I don't care if you're like shy or whatever. It's like, maybe you're not good at it. You learn to be good at it. You just have no choice. You have to get on sales calls. People like getting on post-sales calls, and it's almost too late at that point. You got to get on those sales calls. That's my biggest thing.
Exactly. Learn the trick yourself, and then of course then you also see what works, and you can also hand it over to other people. But just hoping that someone else will fix it for you, never gonna work.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, then where can people go to find out more about Briq, or to say hi to you?
briq.com or briq.ai. Either one works great. You can also find me on LinkedIn or reach out by email, bassem@briq.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for
Thank you.
being so open today and sharing the wisdom. Eager to follow where you're going with this. So let's plan another one in about 5 years.
I love it. I love it.
Then you will
Thank
be
you so
4
much, sir.
employees.
Yeah. Biggest software company on the planet, 4P.
Exactly.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It was a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And this wraps up my conversation with Bassem Hamdy, CEO and co-founder at Briq. If you got value from this episode, please share it with other SaaS founders who need to hear this as well. And if you got 10 seconds, a quick rating or review on Apple Podcasts will help more people to find these conversations. Thank you for listening to the Remarkable SaaS podcast. If you want more insights like this, subscribe to my daily email, Espresso with Ton. It's a 2-minute shot of clarity for SaaS founders who want to create pull, not push. You can sign up, along with getting my book, at valueinspiration.com. See you in the next episode.